What's up guys, it's me Lumos Theromax, and today we're actually here to talk about the new Superman and what's going on in the events of Dark Crisis issue number 5, the third to last issue of this wildly crazy crisis event that's been popping off. And I figured it was kind of important to talk about like this specific form because I think there's some confusion as to what exactly it is, and there are enough context clues to kind of point us in the right direction. So be sure to like and subscribe, and let's get to it, Lanterns. Okay, so let's talk about exactly what's going on here because it's pretty weird. But first we gotta talk about the lead up that really gets us there. And more so than anything, essentially we have this guy named Pariah who was cursed by the OG Monitor back in the day to be thrown to the worst events throughout all of continuity, and obviously the worst of those are crisis events, right? Eventually leading him into a situation where he had come across the Great Darkness, and that they managed to have some sort of deal or conversation, or at least that's what's implied because Pariah believes that, and he wound up getting Great Darkness powers and rolling back up on creation via those monitor hacks, and basically is trying to make up for all the mistakes that he had before. One of those things is creating the infinite multiverse, and so creating this infinite multiverse, he creates them, and he creates them out of the Justice League because he trapped them and tied their beings to these worlds that he's creating these infinite worlds from. And of course Superman is in one of these worlds specifically, which is important to know, as well as all of the heroes. And as you're gonna see here, all of the heroes kind of show up to Superman's world specifically after trying to break out each other of the mind hacks of each one of these worlds, and Superman's kind of aware of what's happening, which is important. And he even uses the term lucid, which is important because it has a variety of meanings, but they refer to these worlds as imaginary and dreamlike a few different times, and I think that's kind of important. So in psychology, the way they refer to like the term lucid is like experiencing a dream as if you're like aware of the dream itself, and you're even able to control those events consciously, which is really important. And with that idea, he goes on to basically pull up this brand new form, and then everything around him goes entirely white, which is really weird. And so what I believe is that term lucid was used very specifically in reference to the context of what's going on here. Superman could control everything inside that world himself. And if that is the case, or if that was true, it makes sense because he just wiped everything clean, but he could not escape that world, even though he could control everything within it. He's aware he's in the dream, but he couldn't escape the dream either way. And of course, the whole league works together after that and manages to break themselves out of it. But what's the important thing about these worlds? Well, if you remember back, this guy named Pariah is drawn to these crisis level events, and this is a crisis. So these worlds by Barry, just before Superman claims they're lucid, are actually stated as ticking time bombs of crisis energy. So Superman is able to consciously absorb and control crisis energy. So this new Superman is some sort of wild fusion between anti-crisis energies and crisis energies. So what are those exactly? Well, according to Source, basically all the powers of the Source, there's like two separate sides to it. On one side you have what we call connective, and on the other side you have, well, basically like the opposite, selfish, or you have like justice, and you have doom on the other side. Selfishness, and then of course connective energies. And Superman is in a weird place because he actually has access to both of those power sets at this unique point in time, especially afterwards Pariah saying, hey, you guys are directly connected to these worlds. If they perish, you perish. So he tried to selfishly separate them all individually into these worlds to limit their power, but once they managed to come together, they could overcome them. And to give you an idea of just how scary this version of Superman genuinely is, he immediately after breaking out of all this rolls up on Pariah, and Pariah's like, yeah, I don't want to mess with that. And you could argue he either fled from the battlefield out of terror, or it was his crisis hacks, because he is creating a crisis on Earth in the current moment. And he just teleported away. Either way, he did not want no beef from Superman within the situation. And so from like this pariah had already completely wiped the whole league. If he was not afraid of Superman here, which I don't believe anybody else had stated amps, he would have just one-shot them all and put them back into their worlds, no problem whatsoever. But that is not what happens here at all. So very clearly is Superman like absolutely wiling within this context. Now, going forward, and we're entering theory craft time, okay, Core? So don't freak out on me if something in here doesn't wind up being correct. Because one of the things I really enjoy whenever it comes to these videos is essentially just theory crafting new and interesting things. So what exactly is going on in the future with this amped Superman that I will now be referring to as Crisis Amped Superman? Will he lose it down the way? I think it's pretty logical because there's very few things he could do within the context of like Earth Prime without just one-shotting it. Like, this is absolutely absurd in terms of what he can do. So he's going to have to lose this amp down the way. But will he be capable of containing worlds or controlling dream-like worlds after this that scale equivocally? Like, to essentially anybody who's using a crisis power mind hacks on Superman, will he be able to just consciously alter it to his advantage? That's some really interesting things to think about, because if they manage to find a way to get rid of Superman's like any level of weakness to mind hacks, that would be pretty wild in all honesty. And like, man, it's just so wild, dude. Like, thinking about this stuff is like really crazy. I wonder if Superman will manage to spare everyone else and control all those other worlds so none of the rest of the league has to die. I think that would be really interesting. But if memory serves right, on one of my live streams a while back, we actually ventured through some of the artwork, and they have like a funeral, but Superman was at the funeral, so I don't think Superman's quite gonna die. Maybe somebody else will uptake this role or uptake this mantle to save Superman as well as the rest of the league. I don't know. But Superman, needless to say, is one of the most powerful characters in all of creation, and this new amp seems to definitely be solidifying him in a very unique place in the future, and I'm curious to see how much of that exactly stays. But be sure to tell me what you guys think down below. I'm thinking about maybe live streaming a little bit later in the day, just seeing what happens, seeing who's down to come hang out. And be sure to comment down below what you guys want to talk about either during that, or what you think about this video, or your theories on this new interesting like Superman, because this new Superman is very weird and very intriguing to say the least. I'm really curious to see exactly what like the writers in this series are planning to do with him. But no further ado, guys. Later, Lanterns.